Yeah, absolutely. We have seen former President Trump and former President Obama both release statements. We've seen other members of Congress also release statements honoring the life and acknowledging the death of Queen Elizabeth II. You know, it's interesting because we know that over 200 years ago, there was a war fought in this country to separate us from the monarchy, but still, the monarchy, especially Queen Elizabeth II, is such an incredible figure in the United States. You know, I was scrolling through social media yesterday and even seeing cities and sports teams posting pictures of, you know, Queen Elizabeth, for example, visiting cities like Austin, Texas or Baltimore, Maryland, and sharing those memories. So she may not be our queen officially. However, she is such a major figure, I think, in U.S. history. I mean, she met with, I think, 13 sitting U.S. presidents. So clearly a big part of this country's national memory.
And of course, Americans were never the subjects of the British monarchy, but we are seeing many mourn her death. How is she being remembered throughout the country?
Well, I think overall it's pretty positive. She is seen as a very positive figure. She's known as a strong female leader, for example, someone who's very level-headed, has weathered a number of storms. So she's very much being remembered as that very dignified figure who brought a lot of good and charity to the world. However, there still is some criticism of Queen Elizabeth II's memory, particularly from those who criticize the role of the British Empire and its role in, colonizing and its role in other countries abroad, especially towards indigenous populations. So there is that criticism. However, I think it's so fascinating to see when Queen Elizabeth came to power. I mean, she came to power in the 1950s, just a few years after India became independent, for example. We saw the Suez Crisis a couple of years into her reign. So she very much represented, I think, a changing era for the UK as a country and the British Empire. So it's a very complicated history, and I think you're really seeing that play out in the reactions among various communities and individuals in the United States.
And Julia, what do you know about maybe perhaps official commemoration services that will be happening in the US?
So we know last night at the National Cathedral, just up the street from me in Washington, D.C., the bells rung 96 times to honor Queen Elizabeth's 96-year-long life. We know that Joe Biden has gone to the British Embassy to sign a book of condolences. There's flowers being laid at the British Embassy in the U.S. today. We know that the president does plan to make a trip to London with other world leaders for Queen Elizabeth II's funeral. There could very well be other, celebrations of her life here in the United States, I would imagine. So we'll have to see.
And we can see you've been a long-standing fan of the royals, Julia. There is no royal family in the US, like you said, but was she, as opposed to supporters, a de facto queen?
I guess you could say that for some Americans. I mean, there's definitely royal watchers like me who like to throw our little parties whenever there's a royal wedding or a new royal baby. And we obviously acknowledge the death of major figures like her and Prince Philip. But at the same time, I think there's some Americans who say, okay, like I said, we fought a war over this 200 years ago. We're not connected with them, but with the UK and the monarchy. But I think what really unites us, as well as unites us with countries like Australia, for example, is we all have those Anglo roots, and those Anglo roots all come from the UK. And although that history is not necessarily all positive, there's some dark periods of that history, we're all related, we're all connected by the same language, similar customs and culture. So I think in a way, Queen Elizabeth and the monarchy sort of represents that for a lot of Americans.
Now, of course, many American presidents have met with the Queen, mainly in London and during her state visits to the US. What are some of her more memorable moments in the US?
Yeah, so we do know that she's met with a number of former presidents. I remember when she met with former President Obama and Michelle Obama for the First Lady. At the time, I can remember there was a lot of coverage of Michelle Obama putting her arm around her, putting her hand on the Queen's back. That was seen as a bit of a break in protocol. But I think it showed the close relationship between the Obamas and the British royal family, not just the Queen. And of course, there was a lot of attention paid to Donald Trump's visit to the UK and his meeting with not just the Queen, but members of the royal family. We do know that Donald Trump in the past has made very controversial comments about women in the royal family, such as the Duchess of Sussex and the Duchess of Cambridge. So I think we were all watching to see how that meeting would go on, but you really can't tell what Queen Elizabeth is thinking when it comes to politics. She, treats every president, at least in public, the same and in the same dignified manner. So we've seen her, at least from the outside, have a good relationship with every sitting president that she's met.
Okay, Julia, Manchester in Washington. Thanks very much for the views you are giving to us from the US. Thank you.
Thank you.